Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thank you all for joining us today for this live stream event. My name is Albena, and I'm the Program Manager of the Microsoft Reactor San Francisco. I will be sharing session resources with you in the chat, but before we begin, I would like to quickly review two items with you: our Code of Conduct and event guidelines. First, please take a moment to review our code of conduct. Microsoft Reactor seeks to provide a respectful environment for both our audience and presenters. We do encourage engagement in the chat, but please be mindful of your commentary, remain professional and on topic. And secondly, our code of our event guidelines. This session is being recorded and will be available on demand through the Microsoft Reactor YouTube channel in about 24 to 48 hours. I'll be sharing the link in the chat for our YouTube channel, and if you have not been on a live stream through YouTube before, please know that you must create an account on YouTube in order to access and interact in the chat. You can set that up right now, and if you're unable to use the chat but have questions, feel free to reach out to us through the social media or meetup. Which brings us to today's session, Extend a Web App to Microsoft Teams Team App Camp Workshop. I'm going to bring one of our speakers, Sam Ronsky. Hello, Sam. Welcome.
Hello. Hello, everybody. I am Sam Ronsky. I am a regional cloud advocate here at Microsoft. My job is to help empower all of you to build awesome things on top of Microsoft technology. I'm super excited for what we're doing today because we're taking a look at the Teams App Camp. I've done a little bit of work with building chat apps and things like that in the past, but never with Teams. And so I'm really excited to learn a little bit more from Rabia and Bob today. And so I think we can bring them in and they can introduce themselves and then we'll get started. So Rabia, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hey, Sam. My name is Rabia Williams. I'm a cloud advocate, again, at Microsoft. And with us, we also have Bob German. Hey, Bob.
Hey, how are you? Yes, so Rabia and I worked on this project together and we've had a great time doing it. And I hope that people enjoy using the App Camp or participating as much as we enjoyed putting it together.
Can you tell us a little bit about what App Camp is? I'm not entirely familiar with it.
Yeah, absolutely. Sure. So, and maybe you show my screen at the same time I can show everyone what it is. It's basically the idea that apps run inside of Microsoft Teams and that it's more, you can streamline your work if you don't have to constantly bounce back and forth between the apps that you use and the collaboration tools. So App Camp is about taking an app and kind of migrating it, or more properly, probably extending it into Teams. So the whole Teams app model was designed for reuse. And so at the beginning of App Camp, it's a bunch of hands-on labs and videos, basically. And at the beginning, you're given this app, which you can start with. And it's using the venerable Northwind database, which some Microsofties may have heard of. This has been around since the early days of Microsoft Access, if you can believe that. But it was some free data that we can easily get a hold of. And you can drill into your orders. You can see kind of what your orders. There's some idea of authorization in a way because you're seeing, my orders as this user. And then you can go into products and drill down into the product categories and, just kind of navigate your way around. But it's really just based on this little bit of data that you actually download in the first lab. So in the second lab, what you do is you make that into a Teams app. And so here we are in Teams, in Microsoft Teams, and you can see here on my on my left nav bar, I've got the same app. And instead of navigating inside the app, I'm navigating using the tabs in Teams. And that's just kind of the beginning. That there's a ton of different labs in which you add all different features to the app, and then you can actually learn how to monetize it. So this is actually a revenue stream where you can, and what's nice is that the Microsoft Store commercial marketplace only takes 3%. So you can keep, unlike some vendors that are much higher, you can actually keep 97% of the money that your app earns for you. So it's a big business opportunity as well as a fun technology.
So you can run these things inside of Teams, but what about elsewhere? I've seen apps inside of other apps inside of Office 365. How can I do that with my Teams app? You mentioned running these anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
What does that look like? How do I access that part of this?
Yeah, well, there's some older technologies that are still around, but this is the kind of exciting new thing. And I'm going to turn to Rabia, my colleague here, who actually presented this at the last Build conference. So she's a real expert, and I'm happy that she's here to explain it all. Rabia?
Thank you, Bob. Yeah. So Bob, if you could share your screen with slide deck number 2. I want to give you a bit of a context or understanding of what Teams application is before I jump into Microsoft 365 application.
Good
Because,
idea.
let's face it, there might be people who are new to this concept altogether. So Teams apps, basically, when you think about a Teams application, the funny thing is a Teams app do not really live inside of Teams. It's actually hosted somewhere else. So it's anything like a web page or a web service that's already available on the internet that's being brought into the Teams that you see. So your application in Teams is actually hosted somewhere else. So how Teams app package works, or the Teams app works, is it is a combination of 3 files. With one is a manifest file, which is a JSON file, and there are 2 icons to actually show your logo and things like that. So this manifest file is what holds all the information on where the web page is hosted, where these web services, which would be your bot or whatever, to point to these applications. So this manifest is what creates the Teams app. And Teams app the Microsoft Teams is basically a host app. So that's the concept of host app. Now we are extending this host app to Outlook and Office.com. So basically, it's in preview right now. I mean, Outlook and Office as host apps it's in preview, but this is where the concept is like you can build the Teams app once, and you can have it running in multiple areas like Outlook or Office.com, grabbing more users, who are frequently using other applications. So they don't need to switch context again. So they're in Outlook writing an email. They want to access your application. They can do so without a lot of technical investment because they've already made that investment in Teams applications. So that is a concept of M365 app. And just to touch base on capabilities for anyone new out here, Teams apps capabilities involve tabs, which are basically web pages iframed inside and Teams. There are bots. I don't need to give introduction to what bots are. You probably are aware of it right now. And message extensions are basically to bring information from third-party API or something right into the Compose area to actually make it enhanced. Your messages are more enhanced, and you can add rich cards, etc. You can also have connectors connecting. It could be outgoing or incoming. Dialogues, little pop-ups within Teams, or you can have the rich cards that I already mentioned, like adaptive cards. They are interactive contents, nice looking card where you can click, do actions, etc. So these are certain capabilities you can build with Teams app. Now you can extend them onto other host apps like Outlook and Office.com.
That's great.
So, yeah. So what I will do now is I would go ahead and demo an M365 app. So I'm just going to ask someone to share my screen. So this is the app that we demoed during build as well. So this,
nice.
again, is the same Northwind app that Bob showed earlier. You already saw how it works in Teams. And right now, what we can do is you can extend the same application because the manifest has changed to support in other host apps. You can light them up in Office.com like this. Information from a third-party app right here in other apps, host apps as well. Now, what I like about this is they're also contextual. Like, you can, for example, Office.com is a app that I use most frequently to access my recent documents or what I've been working on, because I'm always coming back to the same thing or what my colleagues are working on. So you can actually understand where your app is running, and make recent orders, show the recent orders. So the app is not just an application just being lit up in different spaces. It's also contextual. It understands, okay, it's in this host app, so I might as well just show the recent orders and things like that. So you can make the most of what these apps are best for. So this is the app running all three different areas. And I can share my screen on how it works. So this is the code, and the code is actually available open source. You can go to one of the links that will be posted in the chat to find the source code for this. So this is the Teams app, which is already running as an M365 app. And the changes are basically involving the manifest file. So like I said, the manifest is what tells Microsoft Teams where your application are hosted and what capabilities are being added, etc. All you need to do is change the manifest version to 1.3 and up. So now I have the 1.14 version, which I believe is the latest at the time. And then this manifest would then tell the applications that, hey, now this is an M365 app. You can light up in the areas where it's supported. So that's one of the changes you can make. And further, I'll also explain a very interesting concept. That is the Teams JavaScript library that we're using in this source code, which would give you some context on where your application is running. So let me go to the module that explains it. So I've got this Teams helper.js file. This is a module of Teams JavaScript library. Cam videos, Bob's videos on whether your application is in Teams or not. That is now modified to check whether your application is in M365 or not, because your app is not just running in M365 or Teams. It could be a browser-based application as well. So this is a good way to check whether your application is running in any of those, and then make sure that you do the right calls or capabilities right after. Another fun bit is understanding the host name as well. From this context information, you can understand whether your application is running in Teams or Office or Outlook, and based on that, you could change up the theme, etc. So this is just a small sneak peek into what you can achieve, but there is a whole lot more there.
Rabia, we do have a question asking from Dave if there are TypeScript examples of some of this JavaScript you're showing, or is it JavaScript only, or do we have both?
That's JavaScript, but I'm sure there are TypeScript shouldn't be a lot of change, because again, you can use the same library. It's a client library. You can use it for TypeScript as well. We could even change this whole up into a TypeScript sample, but currently there is a to-do app sample that's available. I'll be happy to link them up, search it up, and link it down below. Yeah. It's an M365 app.
And there are some more too. There's if you go to https://aka.ms/teams-samples, that will actually bring you to, and I'm sorry, I didn't expect to share that, so it's not in the prepared links for the people who are putting links in the lower third. But anyway, it's aka.ms/teams-samples, and there's a ton of different samples there, and you can actually select what language you want. I don't know, maybe the Outlook, I don't know if they have the other languages as much, but the SDK works obviously in both, and they even have samples in .NET and with other backend technologies.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. I saw another question go by, which was from, let me see if I can find it. It was from Usama, I think. And it was, does this mean that Outlook has a different renderer does this mean Outlook will get a new renderer in order to render these app web pages with modern layout? And the answer is, it's kind of up to your app. So all these tools are either going to show an iframe or an embedded web page of some kind. And whether you're running the Outlook Rich client or the Outlook web page, you basically get to show a web page, or you get, if you have a bot, you get to write a standard bot, etc. So it's up to you, like Rabia is showing here, to kind of interrogate the SDK and say, where am I running? And maybe you want to display yourself a little differently in Outlook versus something else. Go ahead. Rabia, were you going to say something?
Oh, I was just saying, if you can unshare my screen, we could talk about the capabilities
Sure.
that we can.
Do you want to go back to that slide? Yeah. Oh, yeah. So I actually have a slide on that.
Yes, please.
Which you can bring up. Is this the one? So we're
Slide
talking
number 4,
about.
Yes. So this is one. Slide number 4.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
No worries. No worries. So this is these are all the capabilities. Please do explain.
Sure. So the size here, and the idea is to be in multiple different places. Choosing the right capability. Why do we need an SDK? Is mostly because you want to integrate a capability right into your application. It could be, a chat or a dialogue or something that looks native to that particular host application. So when you're building your Teams application, you understand that, oh, what if I could create a group chat from within this page? You don't have to do it from scratch. You can use this SDK to actually do it for you. There are APIs for that. But it's not. So it's not like in Outlook, you do the same thing. In Outlook, maybe the hero capability is emailing people. So you could create capabilities that Outlook is supporting, and then integrate those capabilities into your application. So again, it comes to the concept of grouping capabilities and calling them where it's supported. So mail is supported in Outlook. So go ahead and integrate the mail related features there. Chat is supported in Teams, so you can go ahead and create. So again, your app is expanding into various areas and having the capabilities that each of these apps, that you can call them the hero capabilities of each of these host apps. So I just wanted to point that out because that's the main idea behind this.
Yeah, totally. And I think it's also worth pointing out that this is the JavaScript or TypeScript, whatever but this is the JavaScript SDK that's running locally in the client of the host. So whether it's Outlook running on your phone, or Teams running in a web browser, or Teams running on your desktop, that's what's hosting your app. And the reason I guess that I bring that up is that it's kind of planned for future expansion, right? So if some other email capable app came along, you could just say, is email supported? And you'll get the right answer, even if that app didn't exist when you wrote your app, is kind of the idea of it, I think. So I think it's nice. It's forward looking. Oh, I remember what I was going to say. Exactly. These things are running also, they run in that client program. So for instance, if you wanted to send an email from your app, you would probably use the Microsoft Graph, which is a RESTful API. If you want your app to open Outlook as if you're writing a new email, then that's something that's having local, right? Because your code is running on the client. If you want to control the client, not send an email on the back end, but open up an email so somebody can write an email, then you would use this API. So it's can be a little bit confusing because you're going to see a lot of the same things in the Microsoft Graph, which is like the main API for all of Microsoft 365. And the difference between where you would use this versus that is, do you want to run something on the client side to update the UI, or do you want to actually just go right to the back end and maybe automate sending an email or sending a chat message? So I know I
So-
got confused at first. Like, why are there two ways of doing this?
So previously you were talking about host applications or host apps versus, it sounds like client apps. Is that the difference there, or am I confusing topics? Is that where the delineation is between?
I don't know. I mean, they're all client. They're not. I mean, not in the old school sense of client server, but all these apps have clients and servers. It's just that this JavaScript SDK is what would run on the client side of it. You know what I mean? Hopefully that makes sense. Yeah.
Okay.
And the back end, if you want to talk directly to the server and not interact with the user, but just send a chat message or something, then you would go directly to the server using this other API called Microsoft Graph.
Cool. Okay.
So it's really powerful, but there's a lot going on because Microsoft 365 is big and does a million things, and you're getting to leverage all that, which is great. But obviously, that means you've got to kind of navigate through.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely recommend having M365 in mind when you're building new application for Teams, because that's where the direction is that way. You know, you're going to build once and have it running in multiple areas.
Absolutely. And I see it looks like they're sharing here the Microsoft 365 developer program. That's a great, it's right in the, it's actually right in the labs to sign up, but you can get a tenant with all of the capabilities, and it'll have Outlook and Teams and all these different programs, and you can get it for free for development use, which is just great at that URL right there that's on the screen.
Yeah.
So what does the process look like for taking that existing Teams app you have and then bringing it to use this new functionality? Is it described mostly in those examples that we've been sharing, or is there some steps that you want to walk people through while they're here, or how should people approach that with existing apps that they want to migrate to this new stuff?
Do you want to show the manifest, Rabia?
Sure, that's a great question, Sam. Yes, I'm just going to show my screen.
Yeah, you show it.
I did talk about this very briefly in the beginning. So you have this manifest file, right? So this is what makes the package for a Teams app. And could you share my screen? Or you could open up your manifest file, either way. Cool. So we have something called manifest version in this files, and you can upgrade your Teams app into an M365 app by simply upgrading the version. So from 1.13 up, currently it's 1.14, you can actually make these applications light up in Outlook as well as Office.com. And that's the first step you would do. And if you are using SDKs, like the JavaScript Teams library, if you're using the older version, then you might need to upgrade the package, and 8.0.0 to it will show other capabilities like Outlook or Office.com related capabilities as well in the SDK. So another good news is if you're using the older version, it's still back compatible to some extent, so you don't extensively have to change your code. But in case you're going to use new app capabilities, then you might want to do some changes where I can put the links to the documentation of how you can upgrade it. There are different ways you can do it. You can change your calls into promises, the callbacks into promises, how you get the namespaces, etc. have changed. If you want to go ahead and leverage or use the new capabilities, you'll have to do this. But otherwise, it's just the manifest changes that you need to do. And if you're not using the JavaScript, just the manifest file changes.
Okay.
So really, you could just change your manifest and maybe it would work okay in Outlook. Yeah.
Yes, it will light up. But yeah, and one important aspect that I want to touch base is if you've got a bot For example, if you've got a bot capability or a message extension, if you want to extend it to Outlook, there is a small tweak you need to do in the backend in Azure Bots to extend or to open up the Outlook channels as well. That's
right.
another one bit that you'll need to do. But everything is documented, and you can go ahead and find that out. And let me just search up the documentation and how you can migrate.
Awesome.
I hope that answered your question, Sam.
I think so. I was imagining it being more complicated, I think. And maybe that's just what I was picturing, but it seems like
it's the reuse thing,
depends.
right? It's just a web page or a bot. So that's why it's so simple in a way. I mean, there's a lot of complexity in all the different interactions you can do, but the concept itself is simple.
Awesome.
Right. And Sam, I would say the very consultant answer, like, it depends on what you've built, what your team's app is. So if you want to have more features, more capabilities, if you want to use the SDK, more effectively, you might want to have a long list of changes that you need to do. But this is the short answer. The manifest and the back compatibility, etc., would make it a lot easier for the developers.
Juan Carlos asks a really good question that I want to make sure is clear. He asks if the add-in for Office is different from Teams apps, and the answer is yes. The add-in for Office is an older technology, and it's it's still there, it's still supported and everything, but they're trying to sort of that add-in model goes back to, I believe, 2013. So it's this is something that's newer, and Teams doesn't support add-ins, so this gives you a way of kind of having your app run in both Teams and in other parts of M365. But if you've done add-ins, they're different. So don't get confused trying to think why doesn't this look like an add-in, because it's not.
So I think we have some time to open it up for questions, unless there's more demos you both want to share with us. I have a bunch of questions myself that I might lead with.
Awesome.
But I guess I have like different thoughts here, but one of the cool things that I think about like Teams apps is it makes things more discoverable. Before we did this show, Bob and I were talking yesterday about some cool things that you can do with these kind of apps. And at least working in a big company, the intranet, like the internal intranet, is super confusing, and it's hard to find like the relevant stuff for what your team is working on. And so I think one of the coolest features you were showing me was how you can share your apps directly with your team. Would you be able to show us kind of how that works, and maybe how people can link people directly into their apps and maybe integrate that more tightly with the rest of the team that they're working with?
Totally. Sure. So why don't you share my screen? And so back here in the app, and these are just the personal apps, but these are like the simplest ones. And internally here at Microsoft, you may have noticed that we have an app called Viva Connect, which is a Microsoft app, but they all work the same. The first-party apps and the third-party apps are all the same. And you may have noticed that that's there on your navigation bar, and it's kind of pinned there. I could similarly pin this to my navigation bar, but probably what I would rather do is go into Teams admin and kind of push this out to people. So this is something I don't think we've gotten into even in the App Camp Labs. I don't know if we, I think we pointed out, but it's not actually a whole lab. So where I just went to the Teams Admin Center, and there's all kinds of stuff here for devices and voice and, different kinds of things. But this is the one I always go into because I'm a developer, is Teams Apps. And so here you'll see all the different apps that are available inside of my enterprise app catalog, and also the ability to kind of control which apps are available for people. One of the things I can do is create something called a setup policy. And so suppose I'll just do the global one, but you could set up different policies for different groups of users. So maybe everybody in California has one policy and people in Oregon have another one, Washington has another one, whatever. So if you come in here, you would see the ability to install an app automatically. So you can basically take that app and push it out to all the users in that group. And then you can pin the app. So this is where I've pinned the apps that in my little developer tenant, and everybody just gets them. So you don't have to you don't have to know a URL or anything. If you give it a more interesting icon than I did here with this get started one, which is pretty boring, you might attract people's eye with that, right? And another thing that you can do is if your app is something that runs inside of an actual team. So teams, if for those who aren't familiar, are these kind of groups where people can collaborate, and then there are channels for different topics and things like that. So you can make something called a team template. And that's another way to kind of get your app out in front of people. So if you come in here, here's one that that I made earlier. It's a staffing team for if we're hiring somebody. And I put the HR talent app right inside of this template, as well as another channel. And you can see the app is here, and I could put several apps, anything I want. And then when somebody goes and creates a team, they're actually going to automatically get, oops, wrong spot. I have to go to teams, join or create a team, and then the staffing team is right here. And so the users don't have to know anything except for, oh, when we're hiring, we use this, right? Or when we're doing a project, we use that. And then they're automatically going to get your app. So end users, well, they could go to the App Store, and that's another place they can discover stuff, is, here, and there's tons of applications in here, and you can slice and dice them and kind of come in and say, well, I want education apps, or I want, I'm in the agriculture industry, right? And filter that way. And these folks can, so these are all different ways people can discover your app. They could discover it in the store. They could, there's a workflow where if it requires administrative approval, they can put it on a queue for the administrator to look at. And then the admin can push them out to users through templates and through the navigation. So it's really a nice way of sort of, you don't have to send out that email saying, hey, everybody, please go install this, because it's a lot easier than that.
Can you mentioned the developer tenant, and this is something that I didn't know about until we started talking about doing this session, is that you can actually just create a developer tenant to explore this yourself. And so if you actually want to try a Teams app without deploying it into your production environment, you can do that yourself and have a separate environment where you can create users and teams, etc., without needing to do that. Could you show us maybe how to do that? I know I ran into a few issues doing this yesterday, but I think that was something that for me was, I didn't even know you could do that. And that might lead into Dave's question here about how to actually add an app into a team. I think we kind of covered there, but how do you actually
No, I know. And there's another one about SharePoint. A lot of interesting questions coming. So we'll get to all of them. Here's the link, aka.ms/join M365 dev program. I'm not going to join it because I'm already joined. And what's going to happen is if I come in here, it's going to want me to log in, and I would have to, you could log in with your work and school account or your personal account, but you have to have a different login. It's not going to let you keep getting more and more of them. So I would have to think of another email and everything to sign up for it. But it's pretty straightforward to sign up for it. I believe you had a strange experience yesterday, Sam. Where you got an error of some kind.
Yeah, I couldn't reproduce it, but I ran into an error that ended up resolving itself, it seems like. But when you register for these developer tenants, you actually get an admin user that you can use to kind of run your own team.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then you can use that to run Outlook or a Teams environment to do your development work in without having to worry about potentially running into all of the friction of doing that in some place that has a little bit more admins doing things.
No, that's right. You're kind of on your own. If it says call the admin, you got to call yourself. Absolutely. Yeah. In fact, we were talking about this yesterday, right? Where it's Microsoft 365. It's bigger than Teams. So you can't add a user just to Teams. You have to add the user to Microsoft 365, and then they get all of the features that are there. So here in this admin center, and again, actually the lab talks you through all this. But you can kind of come in and see all my users, and then I can come in and sort of license them, give them. And there's a feature when you create your app, you can actually have it automatically put in 16 users for you, that it chooses the names, or you can make your own. So here you can see I've got my Office 365 developer license, but there's all these other licenses that I got because of Office 365. And you can even test if you wanted to make sure, well, like, does this work in Outlook even if the user doesn't have Teams enabled? You just unclick the checkbox, and now you've got a user that doesn't have that particular feature. So there's a lot you can do. And I really recommend this, right? Like, you really don't want to develop in production. What's the old saying? If you're developing in production environment, you don't have a state. Wait, if you don't have a staging environment, you don't have a production environment either, because you're staging then in production, right? So, that's why they're free.
Yep.
We want people to do that.
Well, I have to say we're getting some really interesting questions as well, especially on the SharePoint side of things.
Oh, good. What do we got here? You want to take one?
So it's from Danusha. It says, is it possible to host these apps, M365 in SharePoint? So the good news is SPFx, the SharePoint framework. So you can actually do that now. If you've got an SPFx app, you can show that app automatically in Outlook and Office.com. So Bob, any thoughts on that? Because you're already part of the PNP calls, which demos most of these things.
That is by far the most popular way to do it, is to build your app in SharePoint Framework. And the advantage being you don't have to host it. It's running in SharePoint. And what could be better as an app vendor that your customer pays to host it, right? But that's literally what's happening with SharePoint Framework, because it's running on the SharePoint that's included in your customer's subscription. So that's pretty nice. But there is a little known way of doing this. And I've got to be careful because I don't really know what the roadmap looks like. This whole thing of running your app in Outlook or Office has actually been around for like 2 years in SharePoint. And so I don't have a cute like AMA link for this, but I'm going to paste the link to the docs into the internal chat, and maybe somebody can send it back out. There is a way to take the app, and this predates the new SDK updates that we talked about. So it works with the older manifests and everything, but you can literally just put that Teams application, even the third-party ones, onto a SharePoint page. So it kind of depends on how you want to do it. Do you want to host it in SharePoint, which means that it will work as a web part in SharePoint, so you could put it in a SharePoint page with other things arranged around it and let SharePoint host it, or you could take a Teams app, which is just that web page, just like you showed, Rabia, where it's running somewhere on the internet. And maybe you've got an app written in some other technology and you don't want to build it in SharePoint. Then you could still put it into SharePoint using this other handy link that we'll shorten and get back to. But basically, that's actually a little known feature. What else do we have for questions?
So you've talked a little bit about running Teams apps as a web page. Are they web pages, or is there something different that's going on there? It looks like when I see a manifest and JavaScript, I assume website. Right. And maybe that's not correct. So and from our discussions, it sounded like that wasn't entirely true.
Right.
That you could connect other things too.
To quote Rabia, consultant Rabia, it depends, right? So some of these capabilities are web pages and some of them are not. And maybe this is a good segue to actually show one of the other capabilities that's not a web page. Tabs and dialogues, which are formerly known as task modules, which are widely known in the industry as modal dialogues. Those are web pages. Actually, a dialogue could also be an adaptive card, but we'll get to that. So those are a great way to reuse your existing web page, right? But there are other things like bots and messaging extensions that are actually not using a web page at all. They're based on a web service. So still you can host it anywhere on the internet, but you're writing a web service, and then the Azure Bot Framework is talking to your app. And I don't know, do you want to show one, Rabia? Do you want me to show the Teams one, or do you want to show one in Outlook, or how do you want to do that? Because I think that would be a cool variation to show here, since we've been kind of all tabby all day.
Yeah. Since you already got the code running in your machine, Bob, can I ask you to show the Teams one? And actually,
yeah, I'll just show the Teams one. That's easy. So just we're kind of being a little informal on this, but Robbie is running the experimental code, and I'm running the less experimental code, the main kind of the output of the labs. If you do the labs in App Camp, this is what you'll end up with. So this is actually a lab that Rabia wrote, and I think it's really cool, is a messaging extension, or I always use the wrong name. They used to be called messaging extensions, but everybody said message extension. So finally I learned to say messaging extension, and then they changed the name to message extension. So just don't mind me if I mess it up all the time. Thanks. Yeah, there's the link. Thank you for posting. And so suppose, and ignore the fact that I have other stuff, because I've run this a bunch of times on this demo machine. But suppose I'm going to ask Katie, can you please check our inventory of chai, because I love chai, and if we run out, I'm going to be really upset. But she's not really going to know what I mean, is she? Because it's a warehouse. There's tons of things in there. So I think I better give her the shopkeeping unit, the SKU. But that's really kind of a pain, because then she's going to have to go look that up in the inventory system. And I don't trust the numbers in the inventory system, so she's got to go and look it up. So what I can do is I can actually extend this menu here in Teams. And there's several different menus that are extensible, but this is probably the most popular one to use. And I can bring up the Northwind Orders app while I'm typing my message. And I can search for chai. And there's chai, and I click on it. And what comes up is this thing called an adaptive card, which is a little snippet of interactive content that you can put onto a web page. You can put it into a conversation like this. You can put them into emails, although that would not be a Teams app, but there are these actionable messages that use them. They're used in a lot of parts of Microsoft 365, and a lot of people don't realize what they are, but they're super handy as a developer. So now imagine that I'm going to switch hats, and I'm not going to take the time to do this, but I'm Katie, and I'm on my phone, and because Teams apps run on, right? Teams runs on the phone. So the same app works fine in the phone. I've actually tried it. And I don't have to go look up the item. All the information is here. And I go and I count up, and I see that we just got an order, and that we actually have 30 more than that. So we have 93 of them. And so she can update, instead of like copying and pasting between the inventory app and Teams, or maybe trying to go look up the information again. That's part of the problem of changing apps, is that every time you change, you pretty much start from scratch, and you have to go look up the information you're working with. She can just type in the updated number into her phone, and that's it, right? And then we can kind of come back and if we take a peek into the products, you'll see that it actually updated the inventory. So I don't know, Robbie, do you want to explain how it works, or do you want me to do it, or how do you want to do that?
You can explain now that you have the screen there, but I would say someone's actually saying they want to do the lab. Oh, it's Bruno. So it's all there in AppCamp. You can go ahead and try out this message extension and let us know. But you can explain, Bob.
Yeah.
So there might actually be a relevant question here asking about iframes and iframe properties and how that works. Because my understanding is these aren't iframes, are they?
They're not anymore. We're not in Kansas anymore. No, the tab was an iframe, but this is a different
Yes,
thing. Okay.
it's a bot.
And the way that it works is that you've got, well, actually, this is probably a better explanation. The way that it works, here's your app, right? And your app is here and being shown as an iframe in the Teams client. That's the client side of your app. But you also have a server side. And this is great if you want to show something on the screen and you can call Azure AD and you can call the Microsoft Graph API that I mentioned earlier to get information about all the other parts of M365. Probably you're also calling your own inventory database or whatever your app does, right? But what if Teams wants to send you a message? What if Teams wants to tell your app, the user just clicked on the three dots in composing a message and typed CH, please tell me what products I should show, right? That's an incoming message from the internet. And so we needed the Teams, I should say we, but it's whoever developed the Teams app model, actually decided to use the Azure Bot Framework because it's easier than building webhooks. It guarantees delivery. It's got security built in, and it's a two-way pipe so that Teams here could see that somebody clicked a menu and send a message through the bot framework, even though it's not a chat bot. It could be a chat bot. You could also put some conversational stuff in this bot. But if you look at the way that bots work in Azure, you've got your app here and all these different channels, not to be confused with Teams channels, that can adapt your bot. And Sam, I know you're a fan of this, right? You can make your same bot work with Slack or Teams or Twilio or what have you. But if you're going through the Teams channel, you can send this activity called an invoke message. So instead of just a message from the user, you're sending an invoke. And that invoke is the way the message extensions work. So it basically says, somebody clicked this thing, what do I show them? And you send that back using the bot framework. I mean, I don't know if that sounds complex, but it's actually not that much code. So let me go find the code for this one. Actually, so if you do the extended labs, here they all are. And I'm going to go down to this one. The all has all of them, and that's what I'm actually running, but I don't want to confuse the code by showing other scenarios. Do you want to speak to this, or do you want me to? You wrote it. It's nicely done.
Either way,
this bot.
we can just go to the bot. Yeah.
Yeah. There we are. So yeah, so this is the bot, and we're bringing in from the Bot Builder SDK. So it's another SDK you need now. The Teams activity handler and a card factory for building those adaptive cards. And the adapter is just going to handle the incoming messages. So what that's going to do is it's actually going to call our code inside this bot when it gets a activity, when it gets a bot message. And from there are all these little overrides that you can do that handle different situations. So here, if handle Teams messaging extension query in the SDK is basically a function that you provide that gets called when somebody clicks on one of those message extensions. And then you can see what she's doing is she's looking at she's making sure that it's the one for the product name, because you could have more than one message extension. And then she's kind of saying, okay, yeah, it is. Go to the database, get the product, and then build up a return message that has, for all the matching products, has two cards, an adaptive card for the little preview and an adaptive card for the result, if somebody clicks on that one. And then when they click on it, there is this select item that shows the exact card, and it kind of goes on from here, but the lab kind of leads you through all that. I'm probably not doing a real great job of explaining it. Rabia, help.
No, you're fine, Bob. It's perfect. But the thing is, the response to all these actions, when you search, there's a handler for it. When you get those items like the chai that Bob demoed, then you tap on it, then there's a handler for that. That's the select item. And once you select that, the response is an adaptive card. So you can see that the response to all this action, when Bob is clicking on update stock, all this, it's an adaptive card getting embedded and shown to you. So you can know that, oh, it's actually updated. I'm getting new values, etc. So that's how it works. And it's probably explained, like Bob mentioned, explained in detail in one of these labs. So you can go ahead and try it out step by step and understand how it works. And for every action in that compose area, it comes to this server-side code, this bot code, and keep running, etc. So yeah,
Exactly.
have a look into our labs and try it out.
And adaptive cards are really cool as well. So we can get into them a little bit if we have time.
Yeah.
Dave asked about the iframe props. I will say that you don't get a ton of control. Obviously, it's Teams that's putting the iframe on the screen, and there's different properties you can set on an iframe element. Some of them you can control you can't control the size of it, and I don't know all of the things, but you can do things like allow it to use the microphone and camera and things. There are settings in the manifest where you can tell Teams that you want your iframe to have those.
Right.
And so that's something a little bit more advanced than
Okay.
our labs. Yeah.
Yeah, so I thought the questions was more on the context information of the tab, like the page ID or the user ID or things like that. But
Right.
Teams library do have like certain capabilities like media. If you want to get your
Exactly.
to open up a photo, or if you want to select one of your photo, all these things that you can build using the APIs in the Teams client library if you'd like.
Exactly. And it's up to your app to be responsive and stuff, and do as we say, not as we do, because the Teams app camp isn't responsive. Yeah. But it's just I just don't have the skill. I don't know. We didn't have the somebody on our team to do it.
It's really a lot of I know. So it's really a lot of things. We may not be expert of everything. So go to the library and search. It's based on your requirement and what your app needs to do. So there might be capabilities supported. So you can go ahead and find out.
Exactly. And you're going to use media queries like any other responsive app. It's just we didn't write them into the thing. So the idea is hopefully people who know how to build websites can do this. Usama asks, can we create our own custom handlers? Or do we have to override the ones from the SDK? And the answer is you have to override the ones from the SDK. So when a message we're back to the bot scenario now, right? So a message comes in or something comes in from the bot, and maybe you got a message because the user typed hello bot, or maybe you got one of these messaging extensions, or maybe somebody was inside of an adaptive card and clicked the button. All those are different overrides. And so yeah, you have to kind of pick from the ones that they give you. So and there's a general one that is kind of you got an invoke message and you can try to interpret it yourself, but it's better to let the SDK do it. Sorry, Sam.
No worries. The other question is about us having a recording of this session. So we will have this up on YouTube in 24 to 48 hours. We're also hoping we have about 5 minutes left. So if people have other questions they want to ask, get those in. But if you think of something or you're walking through the labs over the next week or two, and you do have questions, we're going to turn on comments on that video, and we'll be keeping an eye on it. So if there's things that you want to ask afterwards, after you've maybe tried this yourself and maybe run into something or have other questions after you get your hands on it, you can ask those there and follow up with us. So
absolutely. Yeah, we're going to try that. And just some other things that you can do as a takeaway, not to cut us off, but we're near the end. I want to make sure we have time. Is all of these live streams are available at aka.ms/Teams App Camp. So we've had a few of them now. and they're all going to be there. There's also some other information. Most of the links that you see here are there as well. So just a nice, easy way to go. You can also go to ak.ms/app-camp, and that will bring you to the App Camp website. And that's where you would actually, do these labs. So if you go there, you can, let me just open a new browser. You can actually see that there's a lot more videos, video briefings for business people, video briefings for technical people, and then all the labs are here. So that's a second call to action, I guess. You can also, we have a couple of our sister teams have volunteered to help people who want to bring their apps into the App Store and monetize them. And so if you're an ISV and you want some help, support on the app process, there is a link here, aka.ms/teamsappcamp/survey, where you can fill in the survey with your information, and our team will actually get back to you and give you some direct support. And then finally, we've got our YouTube channel on here. Now there's a couple of YouTube channels. So we've got the one here is the Microsoft 365 YouTube channel. So it's really exciting to get to appear on the Reactor YouTube channel today. We kind of pop up here and there, but if you want to kind of follow, find our next video and the next video, we're most likely to post there on the Microsoft 365 YouTube channel. So there, I've said my bit. We have time for a couple more questions or closing or something.
A few people have called out the app link not working. We posted a few. So if somebody could, it looks like it's the survey link. Okay, awesome. Yeah, we're working on that one. But if there's another link that isn't working, let us know, and I can get you the correct one.
Okay, that's good.
Otherwise, what else? Looks like there's another new question.
There is a question. There's a new question on ngrok, which is fair, I guess.
It is. So I don't know if this is a longer topic, but it's a good one. So yeah,
it's Bob's
the answer.
topic.
Yeah, I was going to say I made a couple of videos on this, so I'm going to kind of redirect, given the amount of time we have left, to those. But if you come in here and then let's see, we'll get the actual link for you. But if you go to the first lab and where it says to install ngrok, there is a video here. What is ngrok and do you really need it? Because a couple of people had asked, like 1 million people had asked. So yeah, so I don't know. I'm not going to struggle with the YouTube embed and the streaming software right now to try to get that link for you. But basically it's here. The answer is for bots, you kind of need it. If I go back, you need something. So if I go back to this picture here, oops. If I go back to this one here, you see how the all these connections are outgoing. So I'm just here. This is like your standard web development world, right? Where you've got some kind of client, a web browser, Teams client, whatever, and some kind of server running on your computer, and everything's local. And you could do that with a tab. That's not a problem. And then if you wanted to call the graph, you would call the graph, and that's an outgoing call. Or if you wanted to authenticate with Azure AD, that's an outgoing call. The problem is, how does the bot call you when you're, that's actually going to be an HTTP connection that originates from the bot framework and goes to your app. That's why you need ngrok. You don't need ngrok. You could open a port on your firewall.
Yeah.
You could use some other tunneling tool. But somehow, you got one? Yeah.
No, or painfully host everything in Azure first.
You could host everything in Azure and use the remote debugger, which it's not painful, I think, to host it there, but it's painful to debug everything over the remote debugger.
Yes, keep on doing that, yeah.
But you've got to have a way for this bot framework, which is running in the cloud, to call into your app on the server side, and that's why we always have ngrok around. Yeah, ngrok rocks. The problem is that some people block it, right? If there's obviously it's an incoming connection, so if you've got like the old school perimeter type security instead of the zero trust stuff, then somebody could run it under their desk and bypass the firewall that way. So I understand why some people block it. Typically, if you get on your guest network or you go down to your local coffee shop or try it from home, right, you'll be able to get through with no problem. But some companies block it internally. I agreed. Bruno said ngrok rocks, and I think it does too. Yeah. Oh, Servio. Somebody, Bruno mentioned Servio as another alternative, so that's good to know. The thing is, there was an Azure service that was available as open source, and a lot of people suggested that when ngrok was blocked, but you're really just moving the same problem to another service, because IT has to say, yeah, you can have connections. You can have one port on your local computer open to the public internet. It's a tough discussion, right? But anyway, hopefully that answers your question, and the videos that I mentioned go into more detail on it.
Oh, well, awesome. I do think we are at time, or actually a little bit over. But thank you both, Rabia and Bob, for joining and talking a little bit about Teams. If anybody has other questions, they can throw them onto the YouTube comments, and we will try to respond to them in a timely manner. This is something new we're trying, so
yeah,
bear with us. But yeah, hopefully that goes well. Other than that, thank you so much for joining me and sharing a little bit more about AppCamp and how you can use it, and how people can get started building Teams apps. So,
well, thank you, Sam, and to everybody on the Reactor team. It's really been fun to do this session and the others with the Reactor. So hopefully we can start a trend here.
Well, awesome. Thank you, everybody, for watching.
Thank you, Sam.
And,
thanks, everyone.